So we know application is very important in our preaching. How do we do this well? This is something that we often do need to work hard at. What do you think, Pete?
Well, I think it starts with that prior commitment that the purpose of the Word of God is to change us and transform us. So right from the very beginning, we are seeking purposeful preaching, information for transformation. The word of all Scripture is God-breathed and useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, training, so the man of God can be thoroughly equipped. So I think in thinking through our application, how do we make it sharp? Well, I think it comes from that fundamental commitment from the beginning about the Word of God, and therefore our preaching, that's what the Word is for. It's to be applied and lived and to make a difference in our life.
So, yeah, preaching doesn't end with exegesis. It's like we start with exegesis, but we've got to, in the mix there somewhere, be dealing with the significance of that exegesis from the very beginning.
Absolutely, and understanding that from the beginning.
Yes.
So we don't preach the passage and then apply.
Yes.
But no, from the beginning, we're understanding that this is what the Word of God is for.
Yeah.
And so therefore this is what our preaching is for. The measure of the good talk is not how many well-done preachers at the door on the way out, but how many lives changed in the coming days, weeks, months, years.
Yeah.
I think that makes a big difference to your attitude to application right at the start.
Yeah. I've heard someone say that, application for them is not just about stuff at the end, but angling the whole way. From the start, they've got something in mind that they're wanting to lead us to.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Gillian, what might this look like in practice?
Brian Chappell's coined a great phrase called the fallen condition focus. The entire biblical story is God addressing the fallen condition of humanity and the world. But Brian's point is that when we come to exegete a passage and come to preach on it, we need to look at the particular fallen condition of humanity that passage is speaking to. And that then becomes our focus for application. So we're not dotting around with little bits of application here and there, but we've got a very firm focus right from the beginning.
Yeah, so that's a helpful way, isn't it, of connecting across the cultural divide to today's audience with that fallen condition focus right from the start, isn't it, the get-go. Now, talking, though, more specifically about particular applications, is there a way that you find helpful to be thinking through that well, to particular people or issues or what have you in the congregation or the people you're speaking to?
Yeah, thinking through the people in front of you is obviously desperately important. I think first when you come to the Word of God, you want to be applying it to the original hearers and then to yourself. But as you're seeking to preach it, that Word to others and help them live by that Word, I think actually thinking about particular people in front of you, or at least categories of people. Who are the people in front of you? Trying to think through how can they apply this good Word of God? So absolutely, yes, that's one of the ways you try to be quite specific and clear in your application.
It's really important too, isn't it, to end with a word of grace. And I think that's one way in which we could extend Chappell's phrase of the fallen condition focus to actually think about the redeemed condition focus, so that people don't leave feeling condemned, but they leave knowing that they're loved, knowing that Jesus has died for them, and that word of grace empowers them for actually putting into practice what you have preached about that day.
Sometimes setting the vision for the application as well from the passage is another way of doing that. What if this week we lived like this? What if for one day we all responded to this Word of God in the way it's calling us to? What a wonderful difference that would make for Christ's sake and for ours. So again, setting the vision for how can we as the people of God live this Word of God for His glory and our good and for the good of the world. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's from the very beginning. It's can be big picture. One of the things I love in approaching this is David Cook's approach. He says that I'm trying to think through more detailed, specific application to think of the necessary, the impossible, and the possible application. And it's just a way of trying to work hard at thinking through all the implications. So what does this passage have to mean? You know, that's going to relate to the fallen condition focus, for instance. What can't this mean? His contention is that often we live with the impossible implications or applications of a passage, and it's good to specifically point that out. And what is the possible? You know, what might it mean for someone working 9 to 5 in a particular situation, or, you know, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I've often found that helpful. I think that is a helpful way of just trying to think carefully for the sake of your people. How can we together live this word of God? Absolutely. You cannot live for God and money is one classic of the impossible application, because we all think we can and we all try to do it. God says you can't. It's really helpful when the negatives sharpen our positives. I think, it's very, very helpful.
Yeah, it can be very powerful.
Yeah.
And what about trying to think outside of ourselves? So, you know, when I try to apply to someone who's not me, like a 14-year-old girl, it can come across as a bit tinny or wooden. Have you got any thoughts on how to really help ourselves think from other people's perspective?
I think one of the things we have to do is actively engage in parts of culture that we might not necessarily be drawn to. Go and watch the latest movies. Get yourself a Twitter account. You might not really want to tweet, but
Goodness me.
If that's what your congregation is doing, I think it's really important that you actually engage in the kinds of things that they're engaging in.
Yeah, I guess that's by all possible means that some might be saved. It's that kind of sort of...
Yeah, and fundamentally know them. Love them enough to know them, speak to them, because I think sometimes it is easier to draw kind of stereotypes of certain people groups or age groups.
Yes.
But they are stereotypes. So often knowing your people will help you speak in. And you do that with great care, of course, not to betray people from the pulpit.
Yes.
But knowing your people, enabling you to speak into their lives. I think sometimes doing it suggestively as well is a way of doing it. You don't have to pretend you have just become a 14-year-old girl as you apply it. But perhaps for you, it's like this. Maybe you're retired and it's like this. I think that's a helpful way of doing it, with respect, I think, too, of saying, I'm not you, but here perhaps is how this could apply for you and to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there has to be humility, doesn't there,
Absolutely.
when we're trying to cut across circumstances and situations. There's a big difference, isn't there, between pretending to get someone and showing that you really care and just know someone.
Absolutely, and you don't necessarily need to love everything that they love, but you need to appreciate that they do. And that's part of knowing them and loving them. That will help you, I think, apply specifically, concretely, clearly for them. Yeah.
Fantastic.